This begins Chapter 3, Lesson 6, dealing with multiplying two-digit numbers. Before we get into that, though, let's just see how much you remember from multiplying one-digit numbers. So let's take 68 times 4, and I'm just going to run this through using the algorithm. If I want to estimate, I'm going to say it's going to be 70 times 4, and 7 times 4 is 28, so it'll be about 280. A little bit less than that. So when I go through and I solve, 8 times 4 is 32. I carry my 3. 4 times 6 is 24, plus 3 more is 27, so I get 272. Let's try another one. 59 times 6. When I go through and I estimate, I'm going to say, 60 times 6 is 360. And when I go through and solve, 9 times 6 is 54. 6 times 5 is 30, plus 5 is 35, so 354. Alright, well, the same concept that we use with multiplying two-digit numbers, or one-digit numbers, we're going to take to multiplying two-digit numbers. So what we're going to do is we are going to multiply 44 times 12. Now, first thing when I estimate, I'm going to do 45 times 10 is 450. So now when I go through and I multiply my algorithm out, first thing I multiply is I'm going to do my ones, just like I did when I was doing one-digit numbers. I'm going to multiply 4 times 2 first, and that's 8. And then I'll multiply 4 times 2 again, and that's 8. So when I think about it, 44 times 2 is 88. Now the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to multiply 10 times 44. Well, when I multiply, if I just multiply 10 times 44, I'm going to get 440. Now if I just multiply 1 times 4 or 1 times 4, I don't get this 440. So what I do is I insert and I annex in a 0. Then I multiply as I would with whole numbers. And it will make sense when I show you, when you see what multiplies out. So 1 times 4 is 4. 1 times 4 is 4. Notice that when I annex in a 0 and I multiply like I did with one-digit numbers, I get the 440. So just hopefully you see that, get that number sense there, that that's what you're doing. And then afterwards, once I've multiplied 44 times 2 and 44 times 10, I need to add these two numbers together to see what I get for an actual amount, and I end up with 528. So let's try another one where we'll multiply, let's say, a three-digit number, where we do 165 times 31. Well, the first thing I want to do is I want to estimate, and so I'm going to say it's going to be 200 times 300, 200 times 30 equals 6,000. So then when I go through and I multiply 165 times 1, well, that's real easy. That just gives me 165. But now when I go through and I multiply 165, I'm really multiplying 165 times 3. So to get that amount, I'm going to get, when I multiply 165 times 3, I get 4,950. So what I need to do is what I said before, where I annex in a 0 for the 10 in the 1 spot. because notice how it ends in a 0 here. And that way I can just move it on over and multiply, if I get my right pen color, multiply normally. So 3 times 5 is 15. 3 times 6 is 18, plus 1 is 19. And then 3 times 1 is 3, plus 1 is 4. Notice I got 4,950. And all I did was just annex in that 0. And then I just add like normal, so that I can take this 4,950 plus this 165. And this gives me 11. This gives me 10, 11 again. And I have 5,115. Alright, let's go through and I will give you some problems to solve, and then I will go through and solve them with you to see how well you did. So I want you, when I get these put up, to actually go through, solve them, and then compare your answer to the answer that I give you when I work through them. And I apologize, it's 26 times 45. Sometimes the pen does not always cooperate with me. I should have given myself room to write in estimates too, and I did not do that. Alright, so then when we go through and we solve this one, I look at it as, I'm like, alright, so I'm going to have an answer of about 300. It's going to be more than that because I just did 30 times 10, just to kind of give my ideas of place value. So I go through and I multiply just like the algorithm, and I get 96. I'm going to add in a 0 here, and then I get, because 32 times 10 is 320. Now I add those together. And I get 416. So hopefully that is the answer you got as well. So when I go into number 2, I do 2 times 5, which is 10. So 30, and I'm going to annex in a 0, and 4, and I don't need that anymore. That becomes a 2. And then 2, 8, 10. And notice at a certain point I'm not sitting here and telling you what my estimates are, so hopefully you have a pretty good idea as to what your estimates are. And so then when I just work through and I solve these, I'm getting the answers that hopefully you have too. And if you're not getting the same answers, see what it is that you're doing wrong here. Oop, I did something wrong here. I did something wrong. What did I do? 2 times 56. Because that should be about 100 times 50. So it should be about 5,000 for an estimate. And this is 12, carry the 1, 0. Oh, I know what I did wrong here. Hold on. 0 times 6. Hopefully you caught it. Hopefully you caught it, because I didn't catch it. 0 times 6 is 0, plus 1 is 1. Now all of a sudden, and then that's 6. Okay, so now I get 612. That's correct. And this is 10, carry my 1. This is, ah ha ha, I did it again. This is 10 carry my 1, so I did that. 5 times 0 is 0, plus 1 is 1. Now, if I go through, And let's see if I get a right answer. Let's go through. Let's just re-add and see if I come up with the right answer. Yeah, I think I'm going to here. This is why it's so important to do that estimate, because all of a sudden I started looking at what my numbers were and I went, wait a minute, this number is way too big. So 5,712. Hopefully that helps you, that first of all you can learn to recognize your own mistakes, and that you know, it's okay to make the mistakes just as long as you can rationalize and catch them before it's time to turn it in. Alright, and hopefully you did well with that, and if you don't, you know how to get a hold of me. And that concludes your